Well. What a shock. We lost. And I have to tell you, I took the Giants on my pick'em sheet. I do a weekly pick'em sheet. I took the New York Football Giants to beat the Carolina Panthers in Munich because I felt confident about what the defense could do. And I was hoping that something would change. And this is probably the hardest thing to hope for, where somebody is as much of a fucking brick, as Coach Brian Daboll is. There's, I think he threw to the tight ends maybe twice, and it wasn't until the end of the third quarter that actually happened. You have to take the pressure off of Daniel Jones. You have to throw to your backs and to your tight ends and to your possession type receivers, little inside slants, little out routes, anything to help to set up the long ball and to set up your running game. Sometimes you can start with a heavy dose of running game, and it's so successful, you can now start setting up your passing game on it and play action. For the Giants, because they're so predictable and they're so vanilla, you have to use a passing game that they don't expect you to use because you never use it. So consequently, whenever you do go outside of your color bar that we know that you do, which is run up the middle 3 plays and then try to send Neighbors or somebody deep. I was happy to see Jalen Hyatt in the game. And I think if Jalen Hyatt had been utilized early on, well, we might be looking at some different situation in terms of the record. But of course, the main thing is always the same. After watching, Saquon Barkley do what he did against Dallas, and just looking at this overall picture, it gets back to the same thing. Joe Shane showed that he was not the right man for the job by getting rid of Saquon Barkley and paying Daniel Jones $160 million. And I looked at Kenny Pickett, and I look at guys like Cooper Rush, and I look at guys that are spread out through the league that are your second tier, also ran guys, and more than likely, Daniel Jones is going to end up being that guy. And he's got great momentum when you give the guy $160 million. And even if he only gets $80 million of it, he'll get signed on to another team as a backup. And once the pressure off of him, and maybe in a different system, he might actually flourish somewhat. Will he be a great top-tier NFL quarterback? I doubt it very seriously if that ever will happen. But giving him the benefit of the doubt in terms of his work ethic, which I know is there, but at the end of the day, you have like 1,001, 1,002, maybe at most 1,003 to access a field. And if you, as a starting, well-paid NFL quarterback, cannot make that assessment in a quick space of time, there was a couple of times where Wan'Dale Robinson was literally leaping in the air because he was so wide open. Same thing happened with Neighbors. So that's a little bit of the play calling. And then again, it gets back again to building this guy up a little bit. And by having those short yardage play calls early on in the game, you can start making this guy relax into it a little bit and see a little bit more of the field as the game progresses. And there's nothing in Daboll's play calling that is helping that to happen. And moving the pocket is critical in today's game. The reason why the pocket passer is going the way of the dinosaur is because you have to move the pocket now. People are bigger, faster, and stronger in the middle than they've ever been before. And that's one of the reasons why I picked the Giants in this game, because of the fact that we have Sexy Dexy who can crush the middle and stop things from happening. But for whatever reason, the Panthers were able to have a successful run game up the middle between the tackles. as well as the fact that I don't think they even got one sack on Bryce Young. So there might have been some disguised defensive plays that I think that Shane Bowen could have called, but that didn't happen either. I don't know why it didn't happen. This was the moment to make it happen and to etch out a win so that you can go into your bye week with some level of positivity. I also was looking at Reddit earlier this morning when I was watching the game, and in it there were two things. One was that by Joe Shane getting rid of two captains on the team, Saquon Barkley, who's your number one offensive player, who now you have an opportunity because of your pick with Neighbors to really seal this down. But the mistake was made for almost, 2 years back, and the way that you dealt with Saquon Barkley. He should already be going into his third year of his contract that you settled with him in 2 years' budget, which would make life a lot easier. That would have allowed you, by not paying Daniel Jones, by making you should have franchise tagged him 2 years in a row. Even though he went 9-7-1, you don't turn around in that year and give him $180 million. You say, okay, let's start out next year and see what it is you could do. You're going to get a 6-11 year with the guy getting hurt again, and you're going to breathe a sigh of relief because you didn't pay him that money. You franchise tag him. You got Saquon in the books and ready to go. And now in this year, you don't get rid of Xavier McKinney, who was making all those guys back there. Tyler Nubin, Deonte Banks, all those guys were playing better under the tutelage of the captain, Xavier McKinney, that you, Joe Shane, let go. So you combine these decisions together, and they're poor decisions from the beginning, but then the level of how poor they are just keeps rising up. It doesn't have a ceiling. You think it would have a ceiling, but it doesn't have a ceiling. And like I said, with every loss the Giants take and every win the Philadelphia Eagles take, sure points to this rising level of dog shit that's been created by these two gentlemen. And I have zero faith in Coach Daboll's. I believe that GM-wise and coach-wise, they have completely lost the team. They don't have true respect for these guys, or be like, hey, what's going on with Joe? What's going on, Brian? They don't feel that way at all. Now, do they feel that way about each other? Thank God they still do and are playing for each other. But when you get rid of your very best player, and now he is just doing stuff that's so ridiculous, that I just read an article the other day that some kid is some high school football game tried to leap backwards like Saquon over a guy. They told him not to, and they also talked to Saquon. They said, hey, listen, this is spectacular shit you're doing, but don't do that because you could get racked up in air in a way. That's why I didn't like it when he was running forward and jumping over people. As a matter of fact, going back like I think 3 or 4 years ago, that's how he got one of his major injuries, by leaping over somebody and getting hit just as he was landing or just before he landed. Keep your feet on the ground, run hard, do your spin moves, make sure you switch your hands, hold your ball up tight. And very unfortunate because Tyrone Tracy Jr., fumbled in overtime, and that set them up for the field goal. And I feel bad for him because he played great, and he got overutilized with a lot of crushing plays running up between the tackles. It was nice to see that he was able to make something happen behind the offensive line, and it shows you how improved the offensive line is. Now imagine if you had Saquon behind the same offensive line that has improved, But Joe Shane, I see that guy as a pencil-pushing, mid-management, what I call a corporate geekazoid knucklehead that made this decision that has sunk this season completely, and it's over. And now we're officially the worst team in the league by losing against the Panthers. So, you're going to come off the break and you're going to have to play the Commanders, who just came off of, who will just be coming off of playing the Eagles. I personally lean towards the Eagles, and that's because of Saquon and how much Saquon has success against Washington. And I believe that the Giants will come in and lay an egg. And there's people that are in the comments in Reddit and on X that are saying, put in Drew Lock, put him in now. I promise you, Drew Lock, if he gives you 5 plays without getting busted up, hurt, getting the ball knocked out of his hand, or throwing a pick, he's going to make Daniel Jones look good. And we saw that in the preseason game, in which the guy came in and played for I think it was 2 snaps. And all of a sudden he was clutching at his neck. He was like, ugh. And I'm like, really? So what did you give him to be a backup quarterback because you're a seasoned veteran? $2 million, $3 million? That's the same money you could have been giving to Saquon. And I have more faith in Tommy DeVito right now, to be honest with you. And the only thing I would say in terms of continuing to play Daniel Jones is, if you're going to, let him audible, because the plays they're calling in there are so vanilla and so ass that anybody can see them coming from a mile away and stop these plays from happening. There might be, something that's better than what's coming in on this guy's earbud. All right. So the other thing I saw on Reddit, which was hysterical, and it might be above the heads of some of my younger subscribers or audience members or whatever, there used to be a cartoon that came on way back in the day. It was, you could Google it, and it was called Mr. Magoo. And Mr. Magoo was a short dude with squinty eyes, and he couldn't see shit. And even if he put on the glasses, he still couldn't see. So somebody called Daniel Jones Mr. Magoo, right? And another guy says, probably not too many people know who Mr. Magoo is. And he says, well, you know and I know, all right? So I put Magoo Jones. And there's a guy that put, maybe that should be like a subreddit, like sub-flavor type thing where we can make that shit stick. Magoo Jones, because he can't see shit. And as far as I'm concerned, you could add Magoo to Shane and add Magoo to Dabols and then add Magoo to Mara, because they all apparently are suffering from the same malady of not being able to see what's really in front of you and to make a good and informed choice about what you're going to do and where you're going to bring the football club. So we're finished. You can put a fork in us. And the only thing that's joyful to me is seeing, one, I'm happy for the Washington Commanders fans. They have suffered more than we have suffered through the years. And I'm happy to see them have a good quarterback. I'm worried about what will happen going forward when the weather gets bad. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can play under the conditions that are in the East, in NFC East and outdoor stadium. RG3 had some problems, and he compounded those problems by making it seem like his offensive line wasn't doing their job when you got to adjust to the conditions in the area in which you're playing. I think he probably has some regrets about that, and he didn't really get to see how well an organization can be ran until he got to the Ravens at the end of his career. I actually think I heard him say that in one of his interviews. And of course, the stench of not having Daniel Snyder in the damn building is got to be like, fresh effervescent roses and whatnot to the stench of that sorry ass, you know what, walking around there screwing up the team. So happy for the Commanders. Very disappointed because I only had 3 losses in my pick'em sheet. I got 9 wins, and the 3 teams that surprised me was the Saints to win over Atlanta. I had Atlanta. I just felt like they were on a roll. Of course, I had the Giants to beat out. It was a battle of the bums all the way in Germany, but unfortunately, we didn't get the dub there. And then the other loss I had was with wasn't the Bills. I can't think of it at the moment, but it was somewhat of a surprising loss there as well. Everything else kind of went my way, and I actually took the Steelers over the Commanders because the Steelers are such a well-coached team that those extra little bits of pressure that Jaden Daniels may not had in some of the other games, I felt he was going to have in this game. My last video, you might have seen me with this wonderful jersey on. I may not have talked about it, but I just wanted to talk about it. This comes from Modell's in New York City back in the day. It was when Rodney Hampton was on the team. It was like, I would say, early 90s. The great Rodney Hampton. Great running back. Strong, powerful dude. And it's a Wilson. It's a throwback. So kind of miss those days with Parcells and with some dependability. But, we're in a different phase now. So I'll end it the way I always end it, with the same mantra. Louis Riddick, GM. Brian Flores, head coach, and at the very least, defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. I'd like to see him be head coach. The man comes from the Bronx. Let's clear out all this old Gettleman garbage and bullshit and start fresh with we're gonna have a decent draft pick. I mean, you look at the Giants' remaining schedule. Who is on that schedule that they're going to beat if they can't beat the Panthers? And the only way that I see us get into a winning rhythm is, one, you let Jonesy start audibling some plays, and maybe that will give him a level of operational comfortability. And you have to start utilizing all your weapons. Of course, going to say it over and over again because the Giants do it so little. And I'm sitting here watching the game today, and I'm seeing Ferguson, even though they were losing so badly, Ferguson made a really good play. And like I said, the only thing that we saw was the Theo Johnson play where we got the first down and whatnot. Oh, yeah, and one more very important thing about the Panther game. Why in the fuck would you call a flea flicker on 3rd and 1? That was the most ridiculous bullshit. And it just shows you between, there's certain things that people do that's a bridge too far. For Joe Shane, it is getting rid of Saquon. It's a bridge too far. Off of that alone, and everything that's happened, that's going to happen, your ass should not be our general manager. And for Dabols to call a flea flicker on 3rd and 1 and end up with a sack is pathetic. And you just might as well have ran the ball. You handed the ball off to the running back at 3rd and 1, and he stepped forward and flicked the ball back. He could have just kept running with the ball. So that was absolutely, positively ridiculous. And this is the kind of shit that's got us at now. We're 2-7, 2-8. You lose count and you lose that much. At any rate, we're back where we started from. I wish everybody a beautiful and blessed evening. We're going to stay in there. We're in it to win it. I've been a New York Football Giants fan for 42 plus years. It's never going to change. I really enjoy watching the Philadelphia Eagles beat the brakes off of the Cowboys. And the only thing that I have left is my dislike for that team. So every time they lose, I feel a little bit happier. So with that being said, I want to wish everybody a beautiful evening. Let's go New York Football Giants. Deuces.